Hey everybody, today we're looking at a Sorcerer Healer build which is designed for endgame content, meaning trials, veteran trials, and even veteran trials hard modes. So let's pop a potion and get right into the character sheet, look at our stats. We've got 35k max magicka, which is great. We've got 17k max health to help us survive. We've got almost 12k max stamina, and then our magicka recovery is almost 2300, and our spell damage is almost 3k with a 39% crit chance. So all around nice stats. 64 points into magicka, and then we're running the Atronach Mundus Stone for increased magicka recovery. Now, in the next patch, I would drop the vampirism. For this patch, is still nice, but for Greymoor, there's no point in running it anymore because all your skills will just cost more, and you definitely don't want that. So just drop that then. Now let's get into the skills. The first thing we've got is Energy Orb, and this comes from the Undaunted skill line. It starts as Necrotic Orb. Morph it to Energy Orb, which is the healing version, and what it does is it floats around the room and it heals everybody it passes by for over a K health. And then there's also the Healing Combustion synergy that your allies can activate if the orb passes them by, and that means they heal for over 7k health and they restore almost 4k magic or stamina, whichever is higher. Looks like this. It's just floating around the room, and then you can see the beam connecting to me, meaning that it's healing me if it passes me by. The next thing we've got from the Restoration Staff skill line is Illustrious Healing, and that's your AoE heal that leaves like your heal over time that's on the ground. It has a range of 28 meters, a radius of 8 meters, and it's pretty much just a healing field, a circle that you put on the ground, and everybody inside of it heals for almost 2k health every 1 second for 12 seconds. Looks like this. Just have the circle on the ground, and everybody that's inside it gets heals over time. Now, the next thing we've got from the Mage's Guild skill line is Scalding Rune. This starts out as Fire Rune, and this is a rune you put on the ground, and then when an enemy triggers it, the rune blasts and deals 7k flame damage, and then an additional 7k flame damage over 14 seconds. So it looks like this. There's the rune, and when an enemy is inside it, or you cast it on an enemy, it will activate and deal damage over time. The next thing we've got is also from the Mage's Guild skill line. This starts out as Entropy, morph it to Degeneration, and this is another dot, meaning another damage over time ability, which lasts for 12 seconds and deals almost 14k magic damage over 12 seconds. This also gives you Major Sorcery, increasing your spell damage by 20%, which we already get from the potions we're running, but if you want to be a little bit cheaper and not use these potions, then you can just get it from there as well. Looks like this. And as you can see above his head, the timer is ticking because the dot is applied. The next thing, again from the Restoration Staff skill line, is Combat Prayer. This starts out as Blessing of Protection, morph to Combat Prayer, and what it does is it heals the allies in front of you, but more importantly, it also grants them Minor Berserk and Minor Resolve, increasing their damage done by 8%, which is very important for trial groups, and also their physical and spell resistance by 1300 for 8 seconds. Now, this looks like this. Just slam the staff down, and then everybody in front of you who's inside of it gets their damage increased by 8% due to Minor Berserk. Both trial healers are supposed to run this because this can only get to 6 people about, I think. So you'll need both healers to constantly keep this up. It lasts for 8 seconds, so just reapply it every 8 seconds and make sure that all your DPS get their damage increased by 8% all the time. The front bar ultimate we're running comes from the PvP skill line Support. You'll have to level it up to 6 to unlock it. It starts as Barrier, morph it to Reviving Barrier, and what it does is it creates a ward, and all of your teammates get a damage shield which absorbs up to 31k damage for 30 seconds, and it also heals them for 17k health, which is probably full health for most DPS over 15 seconds. So this is a very strong ultimate, and also the good thing about running this on our front bar is because of the Magicka 8 passive, which increases our magica recovery by 5%, and then in the next rank 10% for each support ability slotted. So you will get 10% magica recovery just for having this on your front bar. Alright, let's move to the back bar. We're running Barb Trap. This comes from the Fighters Guild, starts out as Trap Beast, morph it to Barb Trap, and it deals physical damage over time, over 18 seconds, and it also grants you minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10% for the duration of the trap. It's pretty simple. Looks like this. Just put the trap down, and then it's there. And if an enemy steps inside of it, or if you cast it on the enemy, it'll close and deal damage over time, and also immobilize enemies, I think. Next up is from the Destruction Staff skill line. This is Destructive Reach. Devastate an enemy with an enhanced charge of your staff, dealing 2,700 magic damage and an additional 7,650 magic damage over 10 seconds. So another damage over time ability. Looks like this. And then it just deals damage over time. For us, because we're running a lightning staff from the back bar, this is called Shock Reach. So don't get confused if you read that. Next up is Dark Conversion. This comes from the Dark Magic skill line. And what this does is you bargain with darkness to restore health and magicka instantly, and an additional magicka over 2k magicka over 20 seconds, and it costs stamina, which is important for one of our sets. So whenever I cast this, I lose stamina. And if I spam it, I can get my stamina to below 50%, where we will need to be for one of our sets. Remember, while you're blocking, you can't restore stamina, so you don't have to spam it 20 times like I just did. Just block and spam it while you're blocking, and your stamina won't go back up. Another way to lose stamina while you're fighting a boss is obviously bashing. This also costs stamina, and is a nice way to drain your stamina if you don't want to run Dark Conversion. For dungeons, you can run the setup as well, but I would advise you to drop Scalding Rune and drop Dark Conversion in favor of the Twilight Matriarch, which is a super huge burst heal that heals people up to over 12k, and not even just one person, but up to 2 friendly other targets. So in trials, you probably won't need this. You should only run this build in a group that is well set up anyway, because your point is to apply a lot of dots and increase the whole group's damage while keeping some heals up. But in dungeons and stuff, I would probably just not run Dark Conversion and Scalding Rune and put the Matriarch on, just so you have a strong burst heal in case someone is very low on health. And then you just drain your stamina by bashing. Next up, from the Soul Magic skill line, which you level up by doing the main storyline, is Consuming Trap. And this is another dot. This deals magic damage over time, over 10 seconds, and it can also restore magicka to you, which is very nice for our sustain. It just looks like this. Just cast the trap, and then there's another dot on the enemy running down, as you can see above his head there. And then the last thing we've got, other than our ultimate, is obviously Elemental Blockade. This is called Unstable Wall of Storms. I DD on this character as well, which is why I chose the Unstable morph. If you plan on only healing on your character, you want to take the other morph, the Elemental Blockade, just because it lasts longer. It lasts about 12 seconds, not just 10 seconds like this. What this does is you put the blockade down and everything inside of it takes damage. And more importantly, it helps us proc the glyph on our back bar. As you can see there, now the enemy is afflicted by poison damage. It's a little skull over his head there. And it can also apply off balance, obviously, because if you're running a shock staff, where is it? Oh, I'll have to look at the skill actually. Yep, you can set enemies concussed and off balance, meaning that their damage taken is increased. So you're running a lightning staff just purely to proc off balance and increase everyone's damage on the target with a poison glyph, but I'll get to that later. Alright, the last one we've got here is Aggressive Horn, the backbar ultimate. This is nothing new. Every healer or tank is probably running this, or should run this. It comes from the Assault skill line, morph it to Aggressive Horn from Warhorn, and what it does is it increases your group's max magic and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, and also you and your allies gain major force, increasing your critical damage by 15% for 10 seconds. So it's a huge sustain and damage boost for everyone in the group. It's very important. You definitely want to run this and be in communication with the other healer and your tanks to have the best uptime you can get every 10 seconds on the major force, increasing the crit damage. Okay, so much for the skills. Now, let's have a short look at the passives. We've got Unholy Knowledge, reduces health, magic, and stamina cost of your abilities by 6%. You definitely want this, it helps you sustain a lot. Also, when you hit an enemy with a dark magic ability, you heal yourself. We're not actually running anything we could hit other people with. We run Dark Conversion, but that's a buff on ourselves, or like a trade on ourselves, so that you wouldn't necessarily need this. After blocking an attack, your next health, magic, or stamina ability costs 15% less. This is also very helpful, because in Veteran Trials you do need to block now and then. And then when you cast a dark magic ability, you grant Minor Prophecy to you and your group, increasing your spell critical by over 1k for 20 seconds. So you will be casting Dark Conversion quite a lot, and by doing so you won't only drain your stamina to make one of your sets work, but you will also give your whole group Minor Prophecy, increasing their spell critical. This is very, very cool, and it's a great damage buff for the whole group, and that's also why Sorcerer Healers in Veteran Trials or Endgame content are favored at the moment. Not necessarily over Templars and Wardens, but they do bring some really cool buffs. Okay, we've got nothing equipped from the Daedric summoning skill line, except for if you're running the Matriarch in dungeons or so. However, you would rescore Magicka if your pet was killed or unsummoned. It reduces the cost of your ultimate abilities by 15%, which is very, very cool. You don't need to run an ability to get that. That passive counts anyway, so definitely get that. Increase your health and stamina recovery while you have a Daedric summoning ability slotted, which is why we in this build do not have any of that slotted, because we do actually not want 20% more stamina recovery. We want to be in control of our stamina and how much we have. And then increases your max health by 8% if you have a Daedric summoning pet active. So if you were going to run the pet, definitely get all of those. Other than that, just go for Power Stone, which is the most important one in here. And then Storm Calling increases your magical recovery. That's awesome for us. Increases your physical and shock damage, which is also great for us. Increases your damage done against enemies by 1% for every 10% they have. So you just get a 10% damage buff if the enemy has 100% health, and it drops down to 1% by the time the enemy hits 10% of their health. So definitely get that as well. And then increases your weapon and spell damage by 2% for each sorcerer ability slotted. Also get that, because we do have a sorcerer ability slotted on our back bar. Destruction stuff, obviously you want to get all of them, very important, because that's our main back bar weapon. And then also restoration stuff, you definitely also want to get all of these, because it's your main front bar weapon. Keep in mind also that if you heavy attack with a fully charged heavy attack, you gain major mending, increasing your healing done by 25%. So do remember to occasionally throw in a heavy attack on your front bar, even though this this build is focused on light attacks. You can make it work, just throw one in now and then. You definitely want all of the light armor skills, because we are running 5 pieces of light armor. Medium armor, you only want the first 3 and the last one, because the 4th one is only when you have 5 or more pieces equipped. And heavy armor, you only want the first 3, because the last 2 are only if you had 5 or more pieces of heavy armor equipped. Then Vampire, obviously this is optional, and it will not be a thing for healers in the next patch, so you don't really need to be a vampire now, because the next patch is coming on very soon. So if you're not a vampire and you want to run this build, just forget about vampirism then. Alright, Fighters Guild. We do run Barb Trap, so would definitely get these passives here. Mage's Guild, we do run a lot of these abilities, so you want all of these too. They're very good. They make your Mage's Guild abilities cost less. They make your Magicka recovery higher for each Mage's Guild ability slotted. And they also increase the duration of these abilities, so that's very cool as well. And then Undaunted, you want all of these too, because if you take synergies, you get more resources back, and you also just get randomly more max health, stamina, and magicka for each type of armor worn. And we are wearing 5 light pieces, 1 medium and 1 heavy, so that works for us. As I said before, the only thing you need in the PvP ones is the magicka aid to increase your magicka recovery, and then you obviously want medicinal use and alchemy to make your potions last 30% longer. You can have 100% uptime on your potions with that. As for the race, I am a high elf on this one. The preferred race would probably be Breton for the increased or reduced skill cost of your magicka abilities and the better sustain overall. But as I said before, I'm running this character as a DPS as well now and then, so high elf is the second best choice for this build, because we do get this spell recharge passive, which helps us out with our sustain, and we get extra max magicka, and we get increased spell damage, which also comes down on our healing and makes it stronger. So preferred race, especially if the vampirism goes away, where you get extra magicka recovery, which you won't have in Greymoor, Breton would probably be the number 1 choice, and high elf the number 2 choice to run this on. Okay, let's get into the sets. How do we make all of these dots and everything work? The first set we're running is martial knowledge on the body. You want all the pieces in divines except for the legs and chest, and infused with tri-stack glyphs on them. Now, what does martial knowledge do? It gives you max magicka, 2 spell damage bonuses, and while your stamina is below 50%, your light attacks cause the enemy to take 8% additional damage from all sources for 5 seconds. This effect can occur every 8 seconds. So this is why we are running Dark Conversion. First of all, so we can get magicka and health back, and second of all, so we can control that our stamina pool is below 50%, as you can see there. I think around the 35 mark is a good place to be, and then if you block, it won't go higher. Obviously, you can't block all the time while you're doing your rotation, but if you notice it going up over 50%, just throw in a quick bash on the boss or 2, and you will go down in stamina, or just use Dark Conversion if you could use some magicka or health as well. So while you're under 50% stamina, all your light attacks will cause the boss to take more damage from all sources, not just from you, but from your whole group. That is why healers run martial knowledge at the moment, because they can buff the group damage so much with that. So you want to make sure that your stamina is under 50%, and then you go on with your skills and always throw in light attacks like you would on a DPS, and these light attacks will then proc the martial knowledge buff. Next up is our monster set, and this is Symphony of Blades, which comes from Depths of Malata on Veteran. You want the head infused with a tri-stack glyph on it, and the shoulders in divines with a magicka glyph on it. Now, some people say that tri-stack glyphs on martial knowledge is not good because you get more stamina, but I disagree with that, because you can keep it under 50% anyway. And then, if I'm under 50%, I still have about 5k stamina if I need to roll dodge or something. So, I'd rather have the tri-stack glyphs on there, even though we're running martial knowledge. Symphony of Blades gives you 4% healing done, and when you heal an ally who is under 50% of their primary resource, you grant them Meridia's Favor, which restores 2200 magicka or stamina every 1 second for 6 seconds, and that effect can occur every 18 seconds. So, this is awesome for sustain, because over 6 seconds, you give people over 10k magicka or stamina back, whichever is their primary resource. It really helps out the DPS with their sustain, and that's why it's an awesome set to run on a Trials healer. Now, shoulders in divines, head in infused, also the head in heavy and the shoulders in medium, or you can also do the other way around and get heavy shoulders and a medium head, just so you have 1 piece heavy, 1 piece medium, and then the rest is all light martial knowledge. Okay, one thing, this set is actually not going to be worse in Greymoor. Yes, they do nerf it a little bit, or so it looks, but they'll also make it so that the 18-second timer is reset for each DPS individually, I think. So it's actually not going to be a very big nerf, because you can just it's still going to be very viable in the Greymoor patch, and it's definitely still worth playing it and still worth getting it. So I'm not gonna change any of that in Greymoor, if that is your question. All right, the last set we're running is Zen. This drops from Lair of Marsilok. It gives you magical recovery, spell damage, maximum magicka, and your light attacks apply the touch of Zen to enemies for 20 seconds. Enemy with the touch of Zen take an additional 1% more damage for each damage over time effect you've placed on them, up to 5%. You can receive the benefit from the one touch Zen per enemy. So, this is why we're running all the dots. We want this stuff encharged with a flame enchant. Yes, it's a bit weird for a healer, but the reason we run this is because we want to proc the burning status effect with our light attacks. So we can set the enemy on fire, actually. And that also counts as a damage over time ability towards Zens. Alright, where was I? So 1% up to 5% for each damage over time effect. That means we need 5 damage over time effects to make this work efficiently. Now let's quickly look back at our skills. We've got some heals on here. We are running Scalding Rune, which is a damage over time effect. We are running Degeneration, which is a damage over time effect. Barb Trap, which counts as a damage over time effect. Shock Reach, which also counts as a damage over time effect. And Consuming Trap, which also counts as a damage over time effect. Plus then, even though we already run 5 of them, we also have the flame damage, which can proc the burning status effect on the enemy, which counts as a damage over time effect. And on our back bar, we actually have a poison damage glyph and infused, which can proc the poison status effect on the enemy. So altogether, we're not just running 5, we're actually running 7 damage over time abilities that would count towards Zen, and give the stacks of Zen, and then increase the damage taken of the boss or enemy for the whole group as well, just like martial knowledge. So you can give people a 5% damage increase with Zens, everybody in your group, and an 8% damage increase with martial knowledge, also everyone in your group. Meaning you'll be there buffing your team's resources with Symphony of Blades, putting heals over time down like this, giving them synergies, giving them Combat Prayer to increase their damage by 8%, and your sets will also increase their damage by 8% and 5%. Now, Zen's restoration stuff you want with a Flame Enchant Encharged to increase the chance to apply the status effect, the burning one, and the jewelry you'll want in Arcane with all spell damage glyphs, or if you have trouble sustaining, which you shouldn't, you can put 1 magical recovery on the necklace and then spell damage on the rings. Just figure that out for yourself and see how it works for you. On our back bar, we are running the Maelstrom's Lightning Staff and infused with a poison damage glyph to proc the poison status effect, and also to increase our light and heavy attacks to enemies inside of our wall of elements, which is this here. And then everyone inside of it will take more damage from our light attacks. And remember, we need to do, as in a sort of rotation, light attacks, because martial knowledge procs off of light attacks. It causes the enemies to take 8% of damage for 5 seconds. So you want to have a sort of rotation there. Obviously you don't want to neglect the healing. Keep the HOTS, meaning heals over times, on the bottom. Give your group synergies. Give them Combat Prayer. And then you've got some time to run a rotation, which could look something like this. Maybe Soul Trap, Light Attack, Barb Trap, Light Attack, Shock Reach, Light Attack, Blockade, Swap, and then just do your Flame Rune and Degeneration, and then reapply your heals and Combat Prayer and the Orb, and then just cast all of your dots again. And then reapply your heals. Obviously, it's situational. You have to really look out. Also, what I did not do right now is get my stamina down to under 50%. So it's gonna look more like this then. Barb Trap also costs stamina, so it should be, as you can see, very easy for you to actually sustain that under 50% stamina thing. Because every time I cast Barb Trap, my stam drops a little bit. And if it really goes over 50, just throw in a quick bash, as I said before, and lose some more stamina. Just make sure you have enough to pay for Barb Trap, actually. Alright, so much for this. That's how the build works. That's how you buff your whole group's damage, how you give them synergies, and take care of their resource management a little bit, help them with that. It's a very nice build, very strong to buff trials groups. We'll quickly go over the champion points, and then that'll be it for this video. 72 Ironclad, 16 Spell Shield, 51 Thick Skin, 56 in Hardy and Elemental Defender, and 19 in Quick Recovery. 44 in Warlord, 75 and 75 in Tenacity and Arcanist, 20 in Shadow Ward, and 56 into Tumbling, 75 into Blessed for increased healing done, 72 into Elfborn for crit heals increased, 49 Elemental Expert, 10 Spell Erosion, 33 in Staff Expert to boost the damage of our light attacks even more, and then 31 in Thaumaturge for the damage over time abilities. You can also take some more points out of Elemental Expert and put some more points into Thaumaturge if you want your dots to do more damage too. But that is up to you. Alright, I hope you enjoy this this build. It's pretty strong for well set up endgame trials groups. Just make sure you're not running it with people who expect huge heals and expect you to constantly save their ass with the bird or breath of life or something like that, because this is a build which is meant for more experienced groups where players know not to stand in AoEs and not to take a lot of damage and all. So yeah, have fun with this. Hope this video was enjoyable, and I'll see you next time.